Recognize that tune, and you know it's time for Relics Radio. This is a family-friendly show, so the entire family can join us as we talk metal detecting and relic hunting. You can call into the show at 270-495-0315 or join in the chat and post any comments or questions you might have, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. You're listening to Relics Radio of Southern Kentucky and Middle Tennessee. And you are live with Relics Radio in God's country here along the foothills of the Cumberland Mountains, along the Cumberland Rivers in southern Kentucky and in Middle Tennessee. And I'll give you a disclaimer. I just ran through 3 flights of stairs going down into the basement. We just had a thunderstorm come through and it knocked everything off. 3 minutes till showtime, but we got everything back up. And hopefully we will be able to get through the show without any more big storms coming through. We had a massive storm that came through here. But I am your host, Digging with Seven.
And I'm your co-host, Tennessee Jeff. So, what about them storms, Seven? I think you got a little worse storms than I did down here. I mean, of course, we're an hour and a half apart, so...
Yeah, I think
it was some pretty big thunder boomers coming through your way.
It was absolute constant thunder and lightning, and looking outside, you could not even see. It was raining so hard. So, it kind of scared me because the lights blinked 2 or 3 times, and I knew that, and they just blinked again. You guys are still there, I hope.
Yeah, we're still here. Yeah,
okay,
we're still here. So.
Well, good. If worse comes to worse, we may have to restart, but hopefully we'll get everything going. Chat has filled up, and also I want to remind everybody that when we go off the air tonight, if we make it until 8:30 Central Time, we want you to go over to Plugmaster Forward because they're going to have a live a live stream YouTube talking about the Great Silver Horde. And that's going to be a great show, isn't it, Jeff?
I believe it is. It's going to be a real great show. I've seen that horde now. I mean, it's awesome. It is really awesome. And actually, Seven and I were lucky enough to get a little piece of it. And then, I mean, that's going to go up at the top of the relic case. So, yep. I mean, it's a real nice horde, so.
Jeff Ford and Wes Stringer came over to Tennessee and hunted with us, and great guys, and they gave us a Cohen each from that horde as a memento of that, and we're looking forward to that show. And I see that Mark Hoover is in, and we want to thank Mark Hoover tonight because he is the one that introduced us to our guest, Jim Fielding. Are you there, Jim?
Yeah, I'm here, Seven. I'm sitting here. It's not raining here.
Well, that's a good thing. I don't mind it raining if the lightning and the storms and all of that doesn't come in. I'll give Jeff just a moment to let us know who all's in the chat, and then we'll get started.
Let's see. Like you said, there's Mark Hoover. There's Josh. We got Beyond Sight and Sound. We've got Bill Hayes in the house. Let's see, we got there's Woody Jones, Barbara's in the house. There's several of them. Hey, there's Jeff Ford. So, just remember to go watch the live YouTube show after this show's over with. Let's see, there's Mike, there's Ken, there's Jim.
Just too many, ain't they?
That's about it right now. Yeah.
They're just too many.
Of course, I'm having to go back. Of course, they're scrolling down so fast.
I know it.
There's Jesse Rogers just come in the house.
Yeah, Larry Stevens is he's in. Chris Heimsoff and Wes Stringer and Jeff Ford are all three there. Mike Clutter is there. He's running their chat. I think I'm going to be a moderator on that live stream later on tonight. So we're looking forward to that, and we'll say something else about that before we close the show. But so good to have you with us tonight, Jim. I've been looking forward to this show and to talk with you and to get the listeners an opportunity to listen to you. I know that you've been on Beyond Sight and Sound. I went and listened to that archive show of you and was impressed on the cache hunting, and we're going to introduce that subject and talk about it in a little bit. But just briefly, if you will, tell us what got you into the hobby.
Well, what got me into the hobby originally was back in 1958. I'm sure you all remember that really well, 1958. My father, we had gone down to the Keys because he was buying some scuba diving equipment. On the way back, we stopped at Art McKee's place. Art had a treasure museum on Isla Mirada. And actually, Art was a fairly young guy there then. He's originally called the father of modern treasure hunting, and he had a big museum. All the things he pulled off the 1733 plate fleet. So my father stopped. We went around, and that was before you realized the best way to preserve cannon and things. It was all sitting in the yard, all wet and disintegrating. But I was really impressed with all the gold and silver. That was amazing. And he just picked it off the wrecks, And I thought, I was only like 8 years old then. It wasn't much I could do about it then. But by the time I was 13, I built my own metal detector from a popular mechanics. I got a birdhouse and sawed my mother's broom in half and took the old radio and used that and made a coil out of the antenna and took my sister's bicycle grip and stuck on it and soldered a couple Rayovac batteries on it. That was my first detector.
So it was a family affair. Didn't mean to be, but it was a family affair.
After my father got a hold of me, it was quite a family affair after he'd seen what I'd done. But he was pretty impressed that it actually worked. He's like, it really works. So, I kind of got off, but not without a little bit of pain and suffering, but almost.
Yeah.
So that kit was in the Popular Mechanics magazine, was it?
I think it was 1964 or 65. It was an issue. First thing I found was a Falstaff beer can, a flattened one, in 1965.
I remember Falstaff beer, and I remember 1958. I was 8 years old in 58, so me and you are just about the same age.
Pretty much. Man, yeah, it's cool. I haven't met too many people that remember 1958.
Jeff doesn't remember it.
No, I promise you, I don't remember it.
I remember it really well.
Those were the good old days.
Everything was black and white in 1958. Remember, there was no color yet.
There was no color.
Everything was. Color hadn't get invented until 64 or 65, I think. That was a good year though.
I don't even think I know we didn't have a television then, because it was probably 1962 before we ever got a television, and one of the neighbors had one. And we watched the New Year. They got it for Christmas for their whole family. And, of course, all the grown-ups went in the house, and all the kids was hanging in the windows, watching it. And we watched the New Year's Day parade, and there was a buddy of mine. He was in the window next to me, and he said, when Mr. and Miss Wilson get through with that thing that they call a television, said, I want it. Said, I want to get in there and get one of them little people out and play with them. He thought all the people were in the box,
Larry Stevens,
yeah,
are y'all talking about 1858?
They do me bad.
Yeah, the TV, there was only one station in 1858, and that was the Civil War channel. That was it.
Yeah. They do me bad on here, Jim, talking about my age. So I've got.
I know. I hear him.
I've got a little bit of help now. So you and I being about the same age. What kind of detector do you use today?
Well, yeah, I keep winning metal detectors, and my wife has been winning metal detectors a lot. I basically use an E-Track. I love my Minelab E-Track. But recently I won what did I win? I have an Excalibur. I won a Nokta Impact a couple months ago at one of our, which is a pretty nice machine. I had no idea this was a good machine. This was a really nice little machine. My wife uses an AT Pro, and she has what else does she have? She's a Garrett 250, and she just won one. She won Technetics G2. So we're stacking them up against the wall over here in the corner. I don't know if we can get chairs close to the table anymore. But I basically use my E-Track. My E-Track is my main machine.
Yeah. Jeff?
I've always heard the E-Track was a great machine. And then, of course, the GT you just won. I mean, I've used that once or twice, and, I mean, it's a great machine. I mean, it really is. I mean, especially for the money.
Jeff, you remember when we had on Johnny was on here. He had that Nocta. Is that how you say it? Nocta?
The Nocta Impact.
Nocta Impact.
Yeah.
He had one of those.
Yeah.
And he gave it high marks, didn't he?
He sure did.
It's a good machine.
I've heard other people, and then you can go on YouTube and watch a lot of videos on it. And I mean, it's a great metal detector. So, I mean, hey, you can't knock on any of them, really. So,
no,
they're all good machines.
And Mark Hoover said, especially when you win. Mark Hoover can't talk because Mark's won. Which one of you guys won the most detectors?
I think Mark won the most actual cash. Not so much a detector, but he was packing the cash in at the last event. So I don't know. He's won at Technetics also. I don't know if he still has it or not.
I know he's won some detectors because he's talked about it. And you guys are down there at the Central Florida Metal Detecting Club, where Carolyn is at. You are an officer in that club as well, aren't you, Jim?
Yeah, I'm actually the vice president of the club. Mark is second vice president. Carolyn is the president. We've tried to bring some new things aboard the club. I've been a member of the club for about 10 or 12 years of the club per se. And I more or less got appointed than elected, but it's all the same in the end, right?
It is.
Yeah, we've got a good club. It grows, and Carolyn, and I think you talked to Carolyn on the show. You had a show with Carolyn. Carolyn is actually the first nuclear power person I've ever met. She runs on nuclear power. She just doesn't tire. She does not get tired at all. Carolyn is going at 2 a.m. when everybody else is flying face down in the field. She'll still be going. Like, come on, let's go hunting. What are you guys doing? I'm in the emergency room, and Carolyn's like, hey, come on, let's go hunting. So, yeah, she's a fabulous president. We're trying to bring a younger crowd into the club, and it's done wonders. She's very, very good at what she does. She's very personable. She's isn't afraid to speak in front of a group. Like we have some people that don't like to talk in front of a group. Mark is our Radar O'Reilly. Mark can get us anything, anywhere, at any time. So we rely on Mark for almost everything. Mark knows everyone. You talk about somebody, Mark knows them. Mark's hunted with them. Mark knows everybody. So he's our great Radar O'Reilly for CFMDC. He gets what we need when we need it.
That's good to have, isn't it, Jeff?
Heck yeah.
It sure is. And of course, it helps out. Of course, I know a lot of people here and in Tennessee and in Central Kentucky. He knows a lot of people up there. So, I mean, if we go back and forth, I mean, we're going to have sites to hunt. Now, maybe we can't bring in a lot of people at that one site, but I mean, me and him both, we could get a place to hunt. So, but it does help.
Yeah, he's really, really good. He travels a lot. Mark goes. I mean, I don't know if he has a private jet. Mark, do you have a private jet, Mark? I don't think he does. He uses the conventional airlines. But I'm surprised he doesn't have a private jet because he gets around like, I hear a sonic boom and I go, well, there's Mark heading off to somewhere.
I was on there.
I've seen one that's got a CFMDC on the side of it. So I think that was Mark going by.
That's about the big
I actually created a CFMDC jet in Photoshop. And I paste it up there every once in a while. It's in club colors, too, the green and the yellow. So I would say, and a couple people thought we really actually had a jet. But we're not quite there yet.
Y'all are y'all the oldest club or the biggest club? There's some designation there, I know. I know you were there in 1972, weren't you?
Yeah, we've been, we just celebrated our 45th year as a club. We've been, I think we are the largest active metal detecting club in the United States right now. Every meeting, we get 15 to 20 new members every meeting physically show up. We have people sitting on bookcases in the back now and standing outside looking through the window. I mean, we're going to have to find a new venue soon because we're running out of room.
Well, you must be doing something right then if you're drawing in
yeah.
new people and young people. Young people are hard to get.
Yeah, they are. But we've actually got a lot of younger folks coming in there. You know, I mean, the youngest is Mark's granddaughter. She's our youngest member so far. I don't know how old she is. I think she's 11 or 12, something like that. But we've had a lot of people in their 20s and their 30-something showing up now. So that's been good, injecting some young blood into the club.
Yeah. And talking about Mark got a hold of me. We were on the houseboat. We got a houseboat on Dale Hollow Lake in Tennessee, and we were on the houseboat, and he sent me a message, and he's got somebody else, I think, in Iowa that he suggested, to have a guest. So Mark's been good to us, and he was a guest on here, him and Bill. And Bill Marsh, and so we appreciate everything that Mark does. When we open up the phone lines, we'll get Mark to call in here in a little bit. But there's one thing that I want to talk about. I want to get to cash hunting because that's going to be a segue into Plugmaster Ford and them and their show. But you live right in the heart of the Seminole Indian Wars, don't you?
Pretty much, yeah. We're pretty much dead center to most of the activity. We have a lot of forts that are not very far from us here in Orlando. There's quite a bit of land around here. Some of it's private land that still has remainders of the forts on it. But we have hunted a couple of private areas, gotten permission, and found some Seminole Indian War. Actually, my wife found a musket trigger guard. I actually found an Indian artifact, an actual. I don't remember what you call it, but we used to go around their neck. It was like a copper discs, and they would put it around the middle of their neck. There was a name for it, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it was. But it was like a sign of.
I always called it just a pendant, but I don't know.
It was very much like a pendant, only it was parallel. You would thread the leather thong through both sides, and it would go around the back of their neck. It didn't really hang from their neck. It went around their neck like a bow tie almost, and the front was a copper disc. So I found one of those. That was 14 inches deep, and it was bent in half. So I don't know what happened there, but it was quite a find. I was pretty impressed with it myself, I do say.
Oh, I'm sure.
Well,
that sounds like some great finds.
I know that Jeff has a great interest in Native American stuff, and I'm sure he's got some questions for you on the Seminole things.
Okay. Well, the Seminole Wars, the Seminole Wars basically led into the Civil War. The Seminole Wars kind of stopped because the government had to put money into the Civil War when that came up. So that all kind. We've never signed a treaty with the Seminoles, as far as I know.
Mm-hmm. We haven't. They're the only Indians that we have not ever signed an agreement with, and then right. I mean that's the amazing thing there. So,
well, I guess we're still at war with them.
Well, my great great grandmother was Seminole, and they moved them out of South Florida and moved them to Oklahoma. And my great great grandmother had a plot of land there in a little place called Soper, Oklahoma, on a reservation there. And I'll just tell you the truth. She hated white people.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you can't blame them. I've read up a lot about the Seminole Wars from the 1816 through 1858. And the reason the Seminole Wars occurred was basically they wanted the land, like they did with all Indian people. They want the land. Right. They want to move them out. Mm-hmm. And that's the only reason. I know the Seminoles many times, I've read in historical accounts, had gone under a white flag to the U.S. Army and said, look, if you just leave us alone, we'll stop the war. We don't have a problem. We'll go back, you guys. But there was no going back at that point. And it was really a sad story if you really read the entire historic record of that whole action. That military action was just another sad mark on us as Americans. It's just hard to even talk about.
Yeah.
Very much. I mean, it gets to me when we start talking about the Trail of Tears and stuff like that. I mean, even I was going to pan for gold in the mountains here in Tennessee Smoky Mountain National Forest. And then, of course, it's illegal. And then I was like, done the research, and then of course the reason the government took that land from the Indians because they'd found gold on it. And then
right.
Of course, I mean, it was story after story after story like that. And I mean, it's terrible that it happened, but I mean, none of us talking right now, we wasn't alive then. So I mean,
oh no,
if I could go back and change it, I would, but I can't. So
I don't know. Sometimes if you time travel and change it, something else will happen. So
that's right. That's exactly right. So I mean, would it be worse or would it be better? I mean, you never know.
And
it happens for a reason.
In addition to that,
sure.
In addition to the Seminole Indian, occupation that was there, there is a lot of Spanish treasure in your area as well, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. There's lots of Spanish, and it comes occasionally. We hunt along Cocoa Beach and Port Canaveral Beach. You can't hunt north of the inlet at Port Canaveral because you have the, SpaceX launch facilities there. Now, I know I have some friends that are military that have gone out there and metal detected that beach. If you go to Cape Canaveral Beach, they have a sign about 8 feet tall that says no metal detectors. And if they catch you with one, they'll take your detector, they'll take your car, they'll take your boat, your helicopter, whatever you have, they will take it. They are not kidding around there. We find south of the inlet, we find a lot of stuffed space hardware. We find a lot of beryllium copper. Since 2015, SpaceX blew up and dropped a lot of beryllium copper down onto the beach. And they claim that's not theirs, but I was an engineer. I'm telling you, beryllium copper is pretty much, akin to using on spacecraft a lot for engine cooling and things like that. So, but yeah, there's a lot of Spanish treasure. The Cape Canaveral Bight, just north of where the actual cruise ships come in and out, were the actual storehouses that were set up by the Spanish to store the treasure that they salvaged from the 1715 fleet that went down off of Melbourne, Florida. And they put that all in warehouses along that area. And they've recently found a shipwreck off there that I think they tried to get an agreement from the state of Florida, but the state of Florida wouldn't agree, so they wouldn't tell them where it was. I think they found another galleon off there, and possibly with treasure aboard.
And I read through the interview that you did with the guy. I think it was in the interview that I read that you gave to the magazine. But when you were a young man, they were dredging offshore and dredged into some Spanish gold. Am I correct on that?
Oh, no, that actually wasn't Spanish gold. Those were Dutch ducats. They ran through the middle of it. I was in high school. I went to Pompano Beach High School down in southeast Florida. And I had my last class of the day was ocean science at Pompano Beach High. And we go to the beach for ocean science. What could be better at the end of the school day than to be at the beach? And they had the U.S. Army was dredging off the Pompano Beach Pier about a quarter mile off. And all of a sudden it started spraying gold coins out of the outflow. People were screaming, running around grabbing them. They were Dutch coins. By the time they got word to the dredge offshore to stop, of course, you can't back a dredge up with all them heavy pipes, and they never did find it again. But there were quite a few gold coins. I didn't get one. A rather large lady blocked me and grabbed one. I was 16, I was 16. She died for it, and I went for it, and that was it for me. I either tripped over something or she grabbed that coin. Man, I'll tell you, people were on them like white on rice. But they were Dutch coins.
Can you imagine?
Could you imagine if that happened today?
Oh yeah. Well, there'd be the Army would be standing there with weapons drawn. So.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of your buddy Carolyn Harwick, she just got on. Said, "Hey everybody, hello Carolyn. Glad to have you on the chat here tonight. We're talking with your buddy Carolyn. Jim." Can you imagine that, Jeff? Just be a young man standing on the beach, and all of a sudden you watch the discharge on a dredge, and it goes to spitting gold coins. The way me and you want to find one.
Oh, we'd be like a bunch of buzzards. I mean, we wouldn't leave that spot. So, actually, I'm headed to Panama City Sunday, and then, of course, I'm going to take the Equinox down there and see what I can find. And do you have any good places at Panama City that you know of on the Gulf?
Panama City? I don't know. Panama City is right next to what air base? Yeah, it's good. That's good. That's where they had the mechanical shark from Jaws. So as long as they got that out of the water, that's a good place to hunt. Then they shot Jaws. Okay. That was Panama City. They shot that. I used to back in the mid '80s. We used to dive on the 1733 plate fleet down off Isla Morada in the Keys, and we used to find a lot of 1733 pillar dollars would come up off the El Infante Nuestro Señor del Balvanera that hit that little conch reef. We would come up with handfuls of pillar dollars, 1732 pillar dollars. They were nice coins.
Hey, hold that thought. I want to talk more about that in just a moment, but we've got a hard break, and we'll be right back. If you want to keep up with what's going on in the metal detecting world, then you need to be a subscriber to American Digger Magazine. Butch and Anita Holcomb are the publishers of the magazine and have won awards for 3 straight years for being the best digger magazine on the market. American Digger Magazine is available in both print and digital formats, so no matter where you live in the world, you can enjoy the latest happenings in the hobby. You can get in touch with American Digger Magazine by going to americandigger.com or give them a call at 770-362-8671, and be sure and tell them that you heard it on Relics Radio. And now I know Jeff's going to come back from Panama with the Jaws model.
If I can find
the hardware from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Panama City's not a bad place to hunt at all.
What can he...
I've hunted there a couple of times, but I stayed at a place. It's the oldest place, Fontainebleau Terrace, I believe. And I found some Silver Roosevelts out back, and then I guess my best find so far was a pair of Ray-Ban sunglasses. And actually, that was probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I still have those today. So, but that's
the Gulf of Mexico. In the Gulf of Mexico, I used to live in Naples, Florida, and I used to use an Excalibur a lot to metal detect. And I would go off the beach in Naples, and it was, the Gulf, you can walk out like 5 or 6 miles before it's over your waist. And it's very nice. It's like a lake. And I was out there, and I had a dolphin harassing me. I don't know if the frequency from the detector was bothering it, but a 500-pound dolphin would come up behind me and give me a shove with a nose, knock me down. I got up a few times. I finally found a class ring I was on, but the dolphin wouldn't leave me alone. It would circle around and talk 4 or 5 feet of water and come back and nudge me. And that's a big, I don't want to say fish because it's not, it's a mammal, because somebody's going to say it's a mammal, but in a mammal, it'll knock you flat.
Oh, I couldn't imagine. I mean, seeing that dorsal fin, I would walk on water. I mean, I get out there and I'm looking around. And then of course, I mean, the longer you stay out there, the easier it gets. But I mean, when you first get out there, you're like, well, what's around me? And then of course, I mean, if you do run up on something, well, I guess if it's a shark or anything, it'll eat my metal detector before it'll eat me. So.
Well, the biggest thing is the dolphin, have a blowhole, and they come up behind you even before they touch you. They blow water like 10 feet in the air out the blowhole, and you jump like 30 feet in the air. Right, and you turn around and look, and then something knocks you down face first. You're like, what did I do? Didn't like the Excalibur at all. It didn't.
I'd say not. Of course, here, all we have to worry about scaring us is like a cubby of quail. And then if you're walking through the field or woods or something and a cubby of quail jump up, well, I mean, it'll scare you just like I'm sure the dolphin would blowing.
That's why we take it.
Yeah. Do you have any trouble? With bear up that way?
No, not much.
Not in our area. In my area, 7, he's got some bear up his way. So.
A few. We began seeing those about 4 or 5 years ago, and they come through here in July. And I don't know if that's mating season or whether my understanding is that a mother bear will allow a cub to stay with her for a year and a half and gets rid of them and runs them off about mating season a year and a half. So I don't know that, but we don't have too many bear here. That's
a good thing.
Yeah, all of that's east of us. We got a lot of snakes, but we don't have. But Jeff is right. I tell you what, a covey of quail can scare you absolutely to death if you walk up on them. Hey guys, I want to go ahead and get onto the subject of cache hunting, because I know that you are very knowledgeable about that, Jim, and I want you to share some of that knowledge with us.
Okay, no problem. The first time I got involved, I didn't know that much about cache hunting. I used to have my hunting buddy used to be Kevin Riley from Riley's Treasured Gold. Kevin and I used to hunt a lot in the 80s. And I had never heard of cache hunting. I was at his shop one day, and we used to hang around Kevin's shop. You know, I mean, he's the detector guy, and we all hang around, read the magazines, and don't buy them, you know. But Kevin, we were saying, and a guy comes in from Miami, and he says, you guys know how to use metal detectors? We're like, sure we do. At least Kevin does, you know. And he says, I want to talk about something. He says, my grandfather used to run a cattle ranch down in Miami, big cattle ranch, and he used to sell the cattle to Cuba for gold coins. He said, and he passed away not too long ago, and we can't find. He used to fill milk cans. I don't know if you've ever seen the old metal milk cans. He filled 5 metal milk cans with gold coins, double eagles, I guess they were, from Cuba. Paid him in gold, and he had like about 20 or 30 acres of land. And he said, he told somebody he buried the cans on his land. Now you got 20, 30 acres of land. So Kevin and I agreed to come down there if we could each get a gold coin, if we found them. Could we get a gold coin? He's like, yeah, sure. So we went down there, we looked over the whole place. I mean, big, 20 acres. So finally we're sitting there, and Kevin says, you know what? He buried them, and he didn't have a metal detector. He would have had to have some landmark. And we noticed in like an acre and a half, there were I think there were like 7 or 8 palm trees, royal palms. I don't know if you've ever seen a royal palm. They don't have coconuts. They grow real tall. And I think there were 8 of them. So I said, I'll bet you he buried him in that grove of palm trees, because there's nothing else. The land was clear. You know, they had cattle out there. So we went out there and walked around, and finally we were using a big coil, a 14-inch coil for 1984. It's a big coil. And finally we walked past one of the trees about midway between 2 trees, and we got a hit. And, you know, the grandson was with us the whole time. He's not going to let us out there alone. And we got a big hit. You know, and that time we didn't care. In 1984, we didn't use discrimination. It was all metal all the time, pretty much, even though you could discriminate. The deeper less discrimination, the deeper you go. We didn't know how deep the guy buried it. So we got this big hit. So we got the shovels out, and we dug it, and we found one of them between the palm trees, almost dead center between. If you would take the palm trees and draw a cross between them, it was right in the middle. If somebody buries a cache, they bury it where nobody's going to see it. If they're going to bury it in a house or on your property, you're going to be outside of a road. You're going to be somewhere where nobody's going to see you bury it. And you're not going to bury it terribly deep, because you're probably going to want to recover it in a hurry. That's the whole baseline for burying a cache. If your house is burning down, or the redcoats are after you, or somebody's coming, the soldiers are coming from you, you want to get your valuables, you want to be able to get that thing up in a hurry and get out of there. But not in this case. But that's generally the rule. We pulled that up, and we found an entire can, big can full. It would weigh about, like 40 pounds, big, heavy can full of gold coins. And they were like mint condition. I got one, Kevin got one. We never could find the other cans. We don't know where they were. We went over the whole property almost. It took us 2 weeks, never found anything else. But they were pretty happy with a can of gold coins.
I imagine so.
Oh, we were excited. I mean, it was I think it was like 17 inches deep, which we got a signal. I mean, as I recall, the signal was more of an interruption in your threshold. You know how you pass over something, you get a slight interruption in the threshold. You won't really get a target, but the threshold goes south on you a little bit. You know, so like there's something there. So it was deep, and we found it. We never found any other ones. But the cache, people don't look for caches. I am so amazed. People ask me, hey, you want to come over to Hillsborough County? Let's hunt this old house. I'm like, let's look for a cache. The theory is 1 out of every 5 homes ever built in the United States has a cache hidden somewhere. In the walls, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the ground. can be in the walls. There was a thing called a wire bank. I don't know if you've ever heard of a wire bank, but what they would do is they'd take a couple of big, large bills and they'd wrap it around a piece of wire. You make a little hole in the wall and push that wire through inside the wall. And then you put a little bit of plaster over that. And then you put either your wallpaper or your picture over it. And there it is. And that's your picture's marked. You feel for the little bump on the wall, twist it and pull it out, and there's your money. Off you go. But a lot of people bury things under porches, under flagstones, geographical locations between the barn and the oak tree, or at the base of trees are big on caches. Base of tree is just great. On the far side of the tree, we found a World War II cache that was buried by a German prisoner that was about 10 inches deep. We weren't going to dig it. I was digging with a friend. We had our E-Tracks. And the E-Track has specific, after you get used to CTXs and E-Tracks, they have the dual number system, unlike the single digit machines. And silver is a 0143. If you get a 0143, you're dancing around getting the backhoe into place. And he came over to me, he says, hey, I got this signal under a tree over here, this oak tree. He says, I can't make it out. I'm like, okay. And I went over there and I scanned it. And I'm like, it's showing 3448, it's either steel and some aluminum. I'm like, don't worry about it. I went back hunting. He came back to me like 15 minutes later. He says, yeah, but I'm getting a 43 on that. And I'm like, no. I went back and scanned it. And sure enough, you'd get a momentary 0143 would flash up. And then we go back to silver, not silver, but aluminum and steel. And I'm like, well, let's dig it. So we dug it about 10 inches deep. We came up with a big wad of, I don't know I know Seven recalls this. You probably don't, Jeff. It used to be called cellophane.
Yeah.
And remember cellophane? Anyway, I never hear about cellophane anymore.
I didn't either. I wrapped my little brother up in it one time, and I didn't hear about it no more either.
See, there were all kinds of uses for cellophane.
Talk about it one time.
Yeah. Well, we found this big wad of cellophane, and the cellophane was wrapped in the cellophane was a big brown paper, looked like cut out of a paper bag, wrapped up, and it was stuffed in this big pouch. And we started pulling it out. We found a knife made in France. It was a French resistance knife. We found German tools, German mess kit. Matter of fact, this guy's wife was German, so he could read and speak German. And he says, this is a German officer's mess kit. We dug that up. And in the mess kit, when we opened it up, were the tools. Yeah, I mean, the mess kit, the spoon and the fork. And there was another package in the mess kit. We opened that up. There was I'm trying to remember if I got this right. There was a peace dollar and a Morgan silver dollar. There were two silver dollars in it. They were in mint condition. Looked like they'd been wrapped up in this paper inside the steel mess kit buried almost a foot deep under this tree. I don't even know how long. It'd been there a while because everything was just, and he won. I think he entered everything in the club. He won, I think, for every category in the club with the cash. I don't know why I didn't partake in any of that. I didn't even get one of those silver dollars. But now I'm getting mad. I'm thinking about this. I'm starting to get heated. Well,
you got gypped.
Where's my silver? I would have taken the 1921 peace dollar. I would have taken that. They were in mint condition. The other big cache, this is kind of the opposite thing with me taking the place of Rob. It was Kevin Riley back in 1985. Kevin Riley knew the guys that ran, what do they call it? Big Chief Construction or Big Chief Demolition. They would demolish houses in the Fort Lauderdale area and make way for hotels and more hotels and maybe a few hotels. And all these houses were built in the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s. Now, one of the things that was when I grew up in Margate, Florida, down near Fort Lauderdale, the houses then were all cinder block construction. And almost invariably, they all had what looked like it was the cinder blocks. It was like a square area in the cinder blocks, and you could put plants in there. It was like a big concrete planter that stuck out from your house. I mean, I know my parents' house had one. Well, we were down there, and he says, hey, Jim, come on down. We're going to hunt this house. It's getting demolished, tomorrow, the next day. Let's hunt it. So we went down there. I had a Garrett ADS Deep Seeker, as I recall. It was a good machine, but it had a terrible handle on it. It was not ergonomically. You'd use that thing for 10 minutes and your arm would be like silly putty. I mean, it was just awful. But you know, you were a younger guy then, so it didn't matter. And I was going along this area of the house, and I got this huge signal, big bang them up my ears. And I said, Kevin, I said, hey, come here. He's like, what is it? And he come over, and I said, hey, listen to this. There's something here. And he swung his, he was using a Fisher 1280, I think. And he's like, he says, that's just copper pipes in there. He says, copper pipes. I'm like, okay. So we went and hunted some more. And me, like the other guy that had been with me, I kept going back to it. And I go, Kevin, this signal is just blasting my ears off. That can't be just copper pipes. He comes back and he says, will you stop bothering me about the pipes? He says, just come out here and hunt. We don't have much time. Okay, hold that in mind. Okay, so we hunted. We didn't find much. The next day, the Fort Lauderdale News or the Sun Sentinel, I don't remember which, the morning of the evening paper, they had big headlines. They went in there, Big Chief went in there to demolish this place. Guy with a bulldozer hit that wall, and he blew silver Morgan dollars all over the housing site. There were 7 huge mason jars buried in that wall with, I mean, almost mint Morgan dollars. The construction workers were racing around filling their helmets with this stuff. This is the wall. Sure. I kept saying to Kevin, there's something here. And he's like, leave it alone. Don't go near it. It's nothing. I still remember that. And I called Kevin up and I said to Kevin, did you see the morning paper? He goes, no, I haven't seen it yet. I said, you better read it now because by the time I get over there, you're not going to be alive much longer. So you better take your chance now and read why I'm going to, and bless his, and Kevin passed in 2012, bless his soul, but he wouldn't go near that. I don't know why. What a place to hide it. I mean, because there were copper pipes in there. What a place to hide all that money. I think the face value of it was over $60,000. I mean, the collector's value was off the scale because these are almost mint, except where the bulldozer ran over them, of course. But once again, you never know where somebody's going to hide something like this. We actually had somebody call us a couple of years ago, a guy who told us there had to be a cache in his house. And we went over there. It was a big house. They were going to demolish the house. We went through the whole house. We looked, a good place is in your fireplace, up on the flue, underneath there, inside walls, people cut a little piece out of the wall, taken out. Inside doors, an old trick is to drill a hole in the top of a door. You know how deep you can drill a hole in a door? In a 6-foot door, you can drill that thing almost all the way down to the doorknob, and then big enough to put silver dollars. You put your silver dollars in there, plug the top up. Who's going to look at the top of a door? Nobody.
Hey guys,
Nobody's going to look there.
We're coming up on one more hard break, and we'll be right back. If your passion is metal detecting, then you know how much your success is based on the equipment you use. Let my buddy Tim Henderson of Murray Branch Outdoors in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, help you with that. Tim is an authorized dealer of Garrett, XP Deus, Tesoro, and Macro detectors and supplies, and he is now an authorized dealer for MineLab. So, if you're looking to get your hands on the new Equinox 600 or 800, then Tim is your guy. Murray Branch Outdoors is not only competitive in their prices, but the service after the sale is second to none. Tim not only sells detectors, he uses them, and so he can answer any questions you might have. Murray Branch Outdoors also deals in used detectors, and he'll take your old detector in on trade when you decide to upgrade. So give Tim of Murray Branch Outdoors a call at 615-948-4611 and be sure and tell him Relics Radio sent you. Hey Jeff, why don't you briefly describe to Jim some of the sites that we're hunting and see if he can give us some pointers on where we might find a cache, like the Greenfield Fort and places like that.
Well, see, the Greenfield Fort, it was built in 1780s. And, of course, there was an old after the fort was tore down, there was a we call it a colonial house built. And, of course, we've been looking for, like, the privies and stuff. And then where would be a good place to look for a cache, like, around any home site like that?
Did it have a fireplace at all?
Well, actually, the fort did, and then, of course, the home that's standing there now, of course, it was built in 1830s. And then, of course, that home is still standing.
Okay.
So,
well, a lot of times in some of the older homes like that they would bury it under the hearth, right in front of the fireplace, right in the hearth. If you check, has anybody scanned the hearth? You know, the I don't know what they use to make. They don't really use concrete, but I think bricks or something. They would bury it right in front of the hearth. And it was designed there to get it out and not be in the weather and get wet. And, you look mostly with caches, you look at geometrics a lot. If you have any large trees or anything like that, or there was an outbuilding, there was a barn of some kind. Usually if you get a drone in the air, take some pictures of it from the air. You can take that and then start drawing some geometric references, from there to the largest tree. If there's a 300-year-old tree, it won't be buried maybe under the tree, but it'll be buried halfway between the tree. A lot of landmarks that they used to use to hide caches may be gone now, like a barn and the barn door or a fence around the paddock. Then again, maybe not. I don't know. You'd have to look at what the history is of the place and look for features that may have been there in the past that may have been used for. You have to understand, people that bury caches want to bury them so they're easily found and quickly recovered. Usually they don't dig 3 or 4 feet down and bury a cache. Usually it's buried, under a flagstone, under the floor. I know my buddy found a cache underneath the stairs of a home it was just a foundation. But the stairs the concrete stairs were still there. And they checked under the stairs and there was a signal under the stairs. They broke it up and they found various gold and silver coins under the stairs. A lot of places you wouldn't think of, look like I said about the door, places you wouldn't even think of. I guess the military used to use pipes, and they would put gold dollars in pipes, lead pipes, and they'd either bury the pipe or stick them in a tree or something to hold all those coins and keep them from, nowadays, a lot of people with metal detectors, they sweep an area and they get a good signal in the ground and they go, geez, like we're talking about not digging everything. You get a big signal in an area that's not trashy, you dig it no matter what it says on the screen, because, that tin cap or whatever is, a metal pipe, you're going to go, it's just junk, it's pipe. Well, maybe it's full of gold or silver coins. You don't know. They tried to protect them. A lot of those old jars. I had a friend, she dug up what she thought was a cache, and it had been cache. She dug it up and they were empty. Somebody had dug up the cache, emptied it, and then reburied everything right where they were, covered it back up. But they were near a garden. I think she said they were at the edge of a garden, right where everybody, goes to get their, vegetables. Mostly, when I look for a cache, I look for geometric references between a tree and the edge of the house, or between by the back of the chimney, around the base of the chimney. Something that's solid. People would usually pick something solid that was going to be there for a while, so if you see, a lot of times when you go cache hunting, you stand and you say, if I had to bury something quickly out of sight that I could recover quickly, where would I put it? These were, 18th and 19th century citizens that don't think like we do today. They were strictly straight up, they don't think about it. There was no electronics. It was basically hide and seek. Hide this thing somewhere where it's going to be safe and I can recover it quickly in case of an invasion, in case the soldiers are coming across the field. I need to get my valuables. I need to get out. What's the quickest way to do that? I mean, you couldn't stand and dig a 3-foot hole when the soldiers are coming over the hill with their bayonets and their rifles.
Yeah,
You had to be long gone by that time. So mostly, unless it's I can't think of any instance where I've seen a cache where it was buried very, very deep. Only, some 6 to 12 inches deep usually.
Hey, guys, we got a caller come in. Woody Jones is in. Hey, Woody, have you got a question for Jim?
Yes, sir, Lloyd. How you doing? Hey, Jeff. Hey, Jim. Great show tonight, guys. I was just going to say there's another little thing about some old houses that some people might want to check out. My aunt had bought a house, and it was an older house, and she was going to redo it, totally remodel everything in it. And they started taking off the light fixtures, the plates over all the plugs and the light fixtures. They started finding money, and they ended up with, it was almost $1,500 just hidden behind the plates of the light fixtures. That's something to look at for stuff like that. And old fuse boxes in houses, people were poor, they couldn't afford a fuse. They would put a penny or something behind those old fuses. That's something you could always check if you go to an abandoned house that has an old fuse box with old glass screw-in fuses. Mm-hmm. Screw those fuses out, because it might not be a real old penny, but it's it could be an old wheat penny or whatever. You don't never know.
Could be Barb's Indian right there in the fuse box.
There you go. Exactly, exactly right. And it's something I've always heard too was that you talk about burying caches. If an old person, woman or man, would bury something, they would want to see it when they're in their house, say by a tree.
That's right.
Or like something that they can sit in their bedroom and look at and see that it's buried there, and they know where it's buried at. But they're the only ones that know. Nobody else knows. So, like, if you find an old house and there's a big tree, say, looking out from the bedroom window, that's a good place to check, because you never know. That could be where somebody buried their treasures at.
Or halfway between the tree, because halfway between that tree, you walk directly at that tree about halfway, and there it'll be. You know what I mean? Because sometimes
I never thought about that. Yes, sir. Yeah. Because it's instead of going, well, there's a tree there, I'm gonna not bury it by the tree. I'm gonna come on back this way towards the house a little bit and bury it right there. That makes sense.
Hey,
well, they use paces a lot.
Right.
You pace off 15 steps and bury it.
And then, or go left 15 steps and whatever, how they're going to do it. Yeah. That's cool.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Good deal. Hey. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Taking my call. I'll let y'all go, and I'll wait and see what's going on.
Hey, great.
Right, thanks, guys. Good show.
Thanks for calling.
Yeah. Thanks for calling, Woody.
See you guys. Bye-bye.
Jim, I was talking earlier. I'd found this bayonet. Of course, actually, it come from my brother-in-law's wife, my sister-in-law.
Oh, yeah.
And it says Civil War bayonet. Of course, I've got it in my hand. And her grandfather was really good at documenting stuff. I mean, he was really good at it. And it says Civil War bayonet found on old farm, stuck in fence post for years, rescued by him in 1954. So, I mean, I'd heard several different stories. I mean, that could have been stuck in that fence post for a reason. I mean,
it might have been a marker.
Yeah. Been marking. Yeah. So, I mean, that would be a good, if you could find the fence post where it was stuck at. Of course, I mean, this was in 1954 when it was saved, but finding that exact fence post, I mean, it would be real hard. Maybe you could find the old fence and just try to trace it down. But I know where the farm is, so.
Yeah, that would be your follow that fence post. If you could find any old photographs, it's hard to find photographs of old places, but if you could find a plat or something, or a map, or a property line, usually you put the fence along the property line. You just go on the property line with a 15-inch coil or a 2-box unit and wait for a hit of any kind at all and dig it. You might find a tractor transmission. Then again, you might find a quart jar full of gold coins.
Yeah, you never know.
What relation?
You were saying.
What relation have you found caches in relation to, say, springs?
Could you repeat that? I didn't quite catch that.
Well, all of these old houses that we hunt, they're close to a spring. The Greenfield Fort that Jeff is talking about that we hunt.
Right.
It has a spring off over the hill from it. It also has a summer kitchen that's probably about, what would you say, Jeff, 30, 40 yards from the house. There's a cemetery that's probably 50 yards from the house. What would you look for? And there's rock laid out right in front of the front door that goes out to a fence that goes around the property. If you came to a spot like that, what would be your suggestions on where possible cache could be in a place like that?
You mean near the actual spring?
Yeah. I mean,
I don't think anybody would bury a cache close to a spring because of the groundwater in that area. They like your previous caller was stating, they would like to keep an eye on it. And I mean, just offhand, if I were to look at something like that, but then again, maybe that's what they want me to think, maybe they did. I would check directly along the path to the spring, and back. I can't think of any area around a spring anybody would put a cache.
No, I wasn't
just
saying.
Offhand.
I wasn't saying at the spring. I was just saying in relation to it. Would you?
Oh, in relation to the spring. Yeah, I would look at the path to and from the spring.
Halfway.
I'd scan all the way. Yeah, I'd scan all the way back to the where it originates to get to the spring. I'd go the whole path all the way back, and at the very least, even if you don't find a cache, people dragging water back and dropping things, you may find some nice artifacts in the process.
Oh, yeah. And we also, the same farm, actually it has two of them, and we have another farm that I know it's got one of these old steps that was carved out of rock to get up on horses or your wagons. I mean,
right.
That just hit me. That would be a pretty good spot. I mean, it's a big chunk of rock. If you could just flip it over, you may have a cache under them.
That's right. I mean, you can literally have a cache anywhere. It just depends on the circumstances, whether anybody sees you do it. You want to be out of sight. You want to make sure it's hidden so nobody can easily recover it but you. I don't know if you saw this not too long ago, a couple of years ago, I guess. Saw a guy dug up, and I don't even know if this is actually real. He dug up a cache. They got a strong signal on, and it was like a quart jar of hand soap. I don't know if you saw that. And he opened it up. And there was still hand soap in there, and he reached in and he pulled out a bunch of gold coins somebody thrown in the hand soap, and then buried the hand soap. So I don't know if that was for real. It's on YouTube. I think if you type in hand soap gold coins, you'll probably find it. And I've watched it a couple times, and those gold coins were like mint. Of course, you put them in soap. What else they could be, right?
Yeah.
But still, something about it. Yeah, something about it just didn't strike me as right. But then again, maybe that's the case. You dig up a thing of hand soap, you're like, hand soap. I mean, paint. I mean, who's going to throw gold coins in paint, though? I don't know.
Yeah, that's like the California cache, where all the gold coins were found in the tin cans, and that they sold. I think they sold them on Amazon, and then, of course that was a great cache. Now, you have to be careful with this stuff.
Yeah, the first thing you do in treasure hunting is, like in the military, loose lips sink ships. You find a cache, keep it to yourself. Don't take it to your lawyer and have them take pictures of it. It's just the nature of treasure hunting is, let's not spread this around. I mean, and I've seen this happen time again. We had a guy down here in Florida who found a bunch of emeralds on a shipwreck not too far offshore. What did he do? Came in, he took pictures of it, put it on his Facebook page. Guess what? The state moved in, kicked him off, I think arrested him, and took all his emeralds. So you don't want to talk about when you find a cache. You want to be real quiet about it. But
and here we are. Here we are promoting Plugmaster Ford and Wes Stringer's live podcast. They've had already 3 or 4 videos. I'm working on an article for American Digger magazine on the thing. We're not staying too quiet about that cash.
Well, they had the landowner's permission, and then there was a lot of stuff to that one. So
I don't think
right. Well, if it's a landowner's land, and they've got and you've got an agreement with the landowner, nobody can say anything. That's between you and the guy that owns the land.
I know those guys are listening tonight, and I just wanted to throw that out there for them.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm an old treasure hunter guy. I'm just telling you how it used to be. These loose lip sink ships. If you've ever read any of the old books from the 1960s by Carl Mueller, Treasure Hunter's Manual 6 and 7, I don't know if you ever read them or not.
No,
they're hard to find now. I have one. I've got one. They're like a couple $100 now. But the number one thing Carl always makes a big deal of in the 1962 Treasure Hunter's Manual number 6 and 7 is don't talk about it. Don't say a word about it.
Well, I tell you what.
That's right.
I tell you what, me and Jeff's going to do. If we find a jar or something full of gold coins, we're going to do like Matt, and we're going to claim that we just found one out of the hole and let it go at that.
You need to have a standby. You need to have a stunt jar full of pennies to stand in for that when you do the actual filming. Oh, look at all these pennies we found.
You were
$20 of the pennies.
To find a payroll box from the Civil War. I mean, if that got out, could you imagine? Well, I mean, they would want to take your house. They would want to take everything you own.
Oh, heck yeah!
Before they got everything back. So, I mean, if you find anything like that, the best thing to do is just keep it hush hush.
Well, I know the club up in Gainesville, Florida here, the Jefferson Davis, when they took off, they had a lot of gold with them, and it disappeared around Gainesville. They could never find all the Confederate gold. Somewhere in Gainesville, there's a big iron pot full of gold coins somewhere. Maybe underneath the Santa Fe College now. I don't even know. But, it's there somewhere. But where?
And that didn't even belong to the U.S. government. That was the Confederate States. But I guarantee you they would claim it. They would claim it, wouldn't they?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
The spoils of war.
I don't know if you recall about 10 years ago or maybe longer. My memory isn't good. But the woman had some gold coins that her father left her. There were like 7 or 8 double eagle coins, and the government took them because they said when he had those coins, it was illegal to own gold. So therefore, the government owned them.
Seen that.
Remember that?
I sure did see that. That was terrible.
Yeah.
And of course, they was like, they took them. Was like, we found these, and it's like, well, what are they? How much are they worth? Blah blah. And then they took every one of them.
Sure.
And then even what's the new treasure out? The guy that had he buried a bunch of stuff. I think it's maybe in Virginia, and then he put some maps out on the internet.
No, it's Colorado.
And of course, he was. Is it Colorado? Okay.
Yeah, that's in Colorado.
Is that the one where everybody keeps getting killed looking for it?
I don't know about that.
I believe so. I think, the guy's still alive, and he said there was a few people that's got real close. And then, of course, even if they found that treasure, do you imagine how much taxes they're going to have to pay on that? I mean, they're going to be like, you might as well just give them half of it and be done with it, or even more than that. So.
Well, the first rule of treasure hunting.
What's
and
that?
Here it is.
Okay.
That's it.
Keep your mouth
shut. Don't say anything.
That's right.
It's the first rule of treasure hunting. Yeah, and everybody always goes, "What is that?" And I'm like,
Mark
that's
Hoover's
it right there.
got Finn's treasure. Yeah.
Mark
put it up there.
That's right. It was Finn's treasure, Mark. Yeah.
You were talking about geometrics earlier on cache hunting. Explain that a little bit further.
Well, that's a relationship of landmarks with one another. If you want to pick a spot to bury something in the middle of a yard that has 1 or 2 landmarks, where are you going to bury it? If you want to bury it in the middle, a lot of times people will. In the old days, it would pace things off. They didn't come out with a Craftsman or Stanley ruler and pull that thing out and measure between the tree. They would pace it off depending on how big your feet were. You'd walk to the nearest tree. How many paces to the tree? It's 35 paces to the tree, and then if you go from The barn door to the opposite tree, it's 52 paces. So you figure that out where that is. That's like about 15 paces out and 37 paces in. And that's where you would walk, and you'd mark a mark on the ground. You pace it off the other way, and you put a mark on the ground. And then you make a little map and say it's 32 paces to the east, and it's 4 paces to the north, or 12 paces to the north. And there you go. And that's how their geometrics work. There was an angle between two landmarks. Now, like I said, as the time progresses, you'll lose certain landmarks, like the tree's gone, or the barns has been knocked down. We don't know exactly where the barn is, or where it was. So as a result, even if somebody comes back to look for it, there's been many, many cases where people have returned, 35 or 40 years later to dig up their cache, and the landmarks are gone. The house was bulldozed, tree was hit with lightning, the barn was knocked down, fence was removed, that sort of thing. And they wander around and try to find. They have no more geometric references to find that anymore. If you understand what I'm saying.
I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you have to have a starting and end point somewhere when you're locating when you're navigating, when you're flying an airplane. Even though I can't see the ground, I can tell where I am based on my VOR readings, where I am. I'm 232 degrees from New Brunswick and 102 degrees from West Haven. Where they cross, that's where I am, If the radio goes out, I don't know where the heck I am. At least my navigation instruments, it's just clouds. Where am I? I don't know. But that's how they would pace things off. And it's hard for other people to pace them off, even if they know, because your feet aren't as big or you're not the same size feet. So it may be 30 paces for the guy that buried it, might be 42 paces for you. So you read their map, it says 30 paces. You go 30 paces, you're still 5 or 6 feet from where he buried it. It's a giant tangle, cache hunting. But with today's modern instruments, that's not really a problem. You head for the tree, swing at it, you come back, do some crop dusting back and forth until you get a signal. I mean, you don't have to worry about landmarks anymore. You just have to decide which way we're going to go. We're going to search a yard. I mean, you could search an entire yard with like a 16-inch coil in half a day, pretty much, the backyard.
Well, what you're saying is back in the day, there was a lot of what we might call triangulation, where they would pick out those landmarks, and then the most obvious place would be the middle of that triangle, right?
Right. If you used 3 or more landmarks, it would, yeah. Pretty much, yeah. It's pretty much triangulation, pretty much. From here to there and from there to there, where those two lines of travel cross, that's where you're going to put your. But again, they would have to pace that off. They'd have to know how far out they were. Unless they just eyeballed it, I can't see doing that. If you're going to try to recover it and dig it out of the ground, you're going to need to know pretty much exactly how far out from here and what direction to go. I mean, and sometimes I don't think they'd really need to triangulate. Here's the fence, here's my front porch, going to step off the edge, I'm going to walk right toward that fence, and I'm going to go 22 paces, because that's where I buried it, 22 paces. I mean, they used to use what was called a probe a lot, too. You'd get a sharpened stick, and they'd probe the ground. They'd stick it in the ground or they hit something. There it is. It's within a couple of feet. They'll hit it, and then they'll dig it up. I mean, the old treasure hunters along Florida's Gulf Coast used to use a big bamboo pole. They'd walk along and sink that thing in the beach, hoping to hit a chest or something. I don't know how successful that was, but it's the same. It's the same. It's the same routine.
Me and Jeff have got we got some modern probes, don't we, Jeff?
We sure do, and then we got them from Ace Hardware, and they work out great. Of course, we've been looking for the privies around these old home sites, and then that's one thing I would really love to get into finding is the privies. And then, I mean, here in the rural area, we have no maps of like I think a lot of the fire department maps or anything like that. We don't have that of this rural area, and you just pretty much just walk around looking for a sunken area. And then, you may hit one, you may not. So we haven't been lucky enough to hit a good one yet. So,
well, I've seen some metal probes that were back in the old days that were made. You'd weld a wood bit, a pretty good sized wood bit, in the end of a 1/2-inch pipe, and then you had a T-handle on one end, and you continually screw. It's like oil drilling. You screw another length of a pipe onto the one you have, and you turn it and go down and down and down and down until you hit something or broke something, or I don't know. Yeah. I've seen them use those probes, but I haven't seen them in a long time. Anybody use probes like that, and that's I guess that would be the only way you could locate privies and things like that. I can't think of another way you could do it. Bottles and things like that, can't detect them.
Yeah,
you'd have to have some way of getting down to them.
Yeah, actually, it was a couple of weeks ago. One of the landowners, one of our permissions, we were out, and we'd found this sunken area. And, of course, you could take our probe, and it would go straight down. I mean, it would just as easy as, anything. And we took post hole diggers, and we dug a test hole with post hole diggers. And we never did bring up any pottery or anything. So I'm sure, it was right over where the well is, or the spring house is. So I'm sure it was like a sinkhole going down into the spring house. So I mean, you want to
get in the middle of that.
Yeah, and I mean, you've got to be real careful, especially with the bottles and stuff. I mean, you may break one or two, or hopefully not, but that's one way of trying to doing a test hole is with post hole diggers.
That is so cool. We don't really have much like that here in Florida. We had one case where the town of Oviedo, that's been around since the 1860s, post-Civil War town. We went there, and we were getting the bank that was built in the 1930s, I think, burned. Somebody blew it up. Somebody's mad at the bank in 1931 or somewhere around there, and then somebody dynamited the bank, blew it up. And they got rid of the bank, and they plowed all under. And we went there, and we started digging. Steve Meeks, a friend of mine, he works for Kelly Toys still, and we were there, and he picked up a bottle, an 1870s bottle, beautiful bottle, intact off the top of the ground. And we found out later that there was a drugstore across Main Street called Pemberton's Drugs. We started digging. We started pulling some bottles out of there. We were going to go back the next day. The next day we find there was a bulldozer just raised that site. They drove over countless 19th century bottles and crushed them into confetti. Just drove right over them. They knew they were driving over it. They plowed them all up with a dozer, and they just drove heavy equipment over it all day. We got back there, and it looked like somebody had just, had a wedding, and there was confetti everywhere. They broke every bottle. Steve, I think, got the only bottle out of there that was intact out of that whole. There was a huge bottle dump. We very rarely find them in Florida. Some places you do, but not. It's pretty rare. They broke every bottle. I'm still mad about that.
Man, I couldn't imagine that should be against the law, and I'm sure it is in some states. But that's terrible.
The funny thing is, the bottle that Steve found, they were going to put in culverts, those big concrete pre-made culverts. They weigh about 1,000, 2,000 pounds each. They had dropped them on the site. They just drove over and dropped these huge concrete culverts, and that bottle was right between those culverts. It was within 7 inches of each of those culverts. It was like they purposely just missed the bottle. I've never seen anything like it. Steve's like, look at this. I'm like, doggone. Nice bottle. Steve makes very good. Sometimes there's some nearby towns that have what we call tear outs, and he knows a lot of construction people. And when they tear the road out, we'll go up there with our detectors, and people will be pulling out 1857, sitting whatever, Liberties. And he would find torpedo bottles underneath. He found a couple human bones too, as I recall. I accidentally put him in a YouTube video. I had to go re-edit it. Steve's like, and here's a human knee bone. I'm like, oh, we better take that out. It doesn't make us look good. But he's a bottle nose. That guy can find bottles anywhere. But it's very rare, very rare. It was an 1868 torpedo bottle, I think. Beautiful bottle. Beautiful.
Man,
but not we don't find it very often.
Yeah, they're kind of hard to find. And then our oldest dump in my town here, of course, it's under the golf course now. And then, of course, they're not going to let you dig in the golf course. So
probably not. Chances are, they're gonna frown on that. Overall, cache is if you really think about caches and people hiding caches, if one out of every 4 or 5 homes from the 19th century has a cache, imagine how many caches are now either under a road or have a drugstore built on top of them. It's just, and in Florida here, in Central Florida, they are building things. If you pitch a tent in a field and go put your sleeping bag in a tent, overnight, you'll wake up inside a shopping mall or a bank, because that's how quick they're building things here. They are knocking down trees, knocking down old homes, bulldozing things. I mean, my wife and I'll drive past an area that we're thinking, you know what, that would be not a bad place to hunt. And the next day you go by and there's a road there. It's where did the road come from? A road, and they're building an art studio next to it. Like, where did that go? And
that's the way it is here.
Hey, Jim.
Yeah.
Your buddy and ours, Mark Hoover, is on the line right now. What's going on, Mark?
Oh, hi, Mark.
Hey, Jim.
Hello, Mark.
Jeff. It's good to see
you
Mark. Tonight, and love the show tonight. Great information, and I just wanted to call in and say hi to Jim and let everybody know. I'm just a rookie in the hobby, but I have learned more from Jim probably than anybody else in the hobby, and he's been a tremendous asset to our club and all the things that he's taught all of us, and to be able to get out and hunt with Jim when I have the opportunities is a real pleasure. So I think you guys are hearing and learning what we see every week, and we have a true national treasure in our club in Jim as a person. And I just wanted to call in and say hi, Jim, and just thank you for all the things that you've done.
Thanks, Mark. I'll get that $20. I'll give it to you next Friday when I see you at the club. I do appreciate it.
I thought Mark might have a story to tell on you or something.
Oh no, he probably does. Do you have a story about me, Mark? I don't think. Maybe.
Well, I don't. Yeah, I'm sure there's probably something out there I could tell, but I know.
How about the time I started singing when we were out metal detecting that day? Remember that? You gave me that Civil War music, and I started singing that. Civil War song. Remember that?
No, you should tell them the story about the time that you were asked to come and find that woman's jewelry, and then the father came out and started swinging the pickaxe over your head. Do you remember that?
Oh, no. Oh, man. You mean the Chinese story? Oh,
yeah, that one. You should tell them that story. But
oof, that's a long story.
I don't think any stories that I can think of now. I'm sure that after I hang up, there'll be something I'll remember. But Jim's got some great stories.
Probably a good idea that you didn't remember it as it was. Probably. Yeah, the Chinese story was pretty bad. That in a nutshell, we were asked to go find a ring that a Chinese girl lost. She went in and we said we would. Her father was directly from China. We went down there to search for it. And the short story is it wasn't really a ring. She couldn't find her jewelry box. And her father had basically stolen her jewelry and sold it for a ticket back to China. He had already dug a hole when we got there with the metal detectors, and the yard was all covered with concrete, and he almost hit me in the head with a pick a couple of times. So he didn't want us down with the metal detectors. So yeah, as it works out, that he had basically taken his daughter's 24-karat gold jewelry and sold it so he could buy a ticket back to communist China. It's a good story. It's a long one though. It's a long one. It's in my blog. If you ever go to my blog. Yeah.
Go ahead.
You got a question in here from Deborah. Have you ever found a cache in a farm dump?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay.
Nope. No, but you almost always, invariably, when you find a cache, it's a standalone strong signal. There's usually no other signals anywhere near it at all. It's almost like a park where no one has ever drank a beer. I mean, it's clean. Everything is either a strong signal or there's no signal at all. That's what's the great thing about caches. It's in a dump. I don't think anybody would, unless it was accidentally somebody threw somebody's, when somebody was storing something and somebody tossed the ammo case out and it was full of. I can tell a quick story if you got time.
Oh yeah, we got time.
Yeah.
About we were asked by a lady up in a town up called. Mark, were you in on that? You remember that? We went up to, where was it? Up in Central Florida. It was, I forget the name of the town, but her father had buried, they couldn't find $250,000 and they thought he buried it.
Yeah, I
anyway.
was not in on that one. I didn't make that one.
Okay.
I remember you telling the story.
We went up there. The woman asked us to look for this cash. Her father, who was 92 years old when he passed, had built in the house when he was a kid, he had built a pipe in his room in his parents' house. He put a pipe in the floor and he covered it up. And when he went on his newspaper route, he'd take the money he earned off the newspaper route and he'd drop it in this pipe and close the pipe up. So his parents were always like, hey, you're going to give, in the early 20th century, like, hey, you're going to bring us some cash. He's like, oh man, I didn't make that much. He hid all this money from his parents, but he would go under the house occasionally, pull this jar out and bury it somewhere. So he had a history of burying caches. So his daughter said they found in the house, they found inside where a dryer was supposed to be. They found what was it? What do you call it? File drawer. One of those small ones, 2-drawer file cabinet. And it was locked. They finally pulled it out from behind the washer, and it had, how much money? It had $82,000 in $100 bills when they broke open the drawer. Their arm went elbow deep in this drawer stacked with cash. And they were almost going to throw out, they would dump this thing to be taken away by the garbage out front of the house when they're cleaning the house out. Somebody went out and opened one of the drawers, and the drawers caught on something. So they looked under the drawer, and there was a wooden box, like a big pencil box, stuck under and they broke that off, and there was another $50,000 in cash. So we hunted all over to the swamp. It was awful. Swampy, bugs, snakes, pygmy rattlesnakes. We searched all day for it. And I went to her and I said, are you sure that he would have buried it? I mean, he sounded like a pretty sly guy. I don't think he would have buried it in a mason jar. She goes, oh no, he would have buried it in a mayonnaise jar. I'm like, okay. So we went back and they were cleaning out his workshop. And when she got to the back of the workshop, she says, oh my God, she says. I'm like, what? The entire wall was covered with empty mayonnaise jars with plastic caps. The whole back of the wall. And I'm like, oh, there's your answer. I mean, we did it. We took ultraviolet lights, shined inside the garage. We checked every inch of the house. And they were overhanging a lake. It was full of alligators and full of wasps and rats. I mean, this was something. I mean,
but no way to find that.
We didn't find it
with a plastic lid.
No way.
There's nothing to.
No, unless you got a probe, like Jeff was talking about.
Yeah,
he had a probe.
Yeah.
But there were, I'm telling you, there were pygmy rattlers. You couldn't step on a palmetto fan without hearing something buzz. I mean, it was terrible.
And you were talking about ultraviolet light. Some people do hunt for caches with black lights, don't they?
Yeah, well, the black light is usually, there's two different wavelengths of black lights. And I'm trying to remember what the angstrom rating is. I think one's a 1400, one's a 700. They're a bit different. The reason you use a black light is to look where somebody might have had cut into, had removed a brick and then plastered it back up with new, spackle. And that's going to fluoresce. The old stuff doesn't fluoresce. So, I mean, if you ever read like I said, the Carl Muellener's old books, they used to carry a kit with them when they used to look for caches. When they find something behind a brick, they bring their own mortar and they mix it up and they put the brick back. So but the ultraviolet light will spot new mortar. If you shine it along an area where there's lots of bricks, somebody remove the brick and, it's easy. You pull a brick out, you cut it in half, you put your cache in there and you put half the brick back and then spackle it up. Who knows? Black light can see that. Black light will see a bright fluorescent rectangle where you put new spackle in there. Even if you disguise it by mixing dirt in, it will still fluoresce.
I knew that there was something.
Maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, I knew that there was something with the black light that showed things. Hey, guys, we're coming up to the end of our show because Plugmaster Ford on his YouTube channel, and somebody put a link in the chat to his channel there where I'd like for everybody to go over to that because they have an actual cache that they found. They're doing the wrap-up video on that, but before we go, Jim, tell everybody how they can get in touch with you as far as if you got a YouTube channel, Facebook, a website, or anything like that.
We have, if you type into your browser on Facebook, Central Florida Metal Detecting Club, I'm one of the administrators there that take you right to our club page. That's pretty much the quickest way to get a hold of me because I'm looking at that thing all the time.
Yeah.
So, Central Florida Metal Detecting Club, type that into the Facebook browser, and it'll take you directly to our club page, and I'm on there all the time. I'm one of the administrators.
And
Can't miss me.
Have you got a personal website where you have any of this information?
I have a blog called Detecting an Attitude, and that's a regular blog. It's on Blogger. You just type in Detecting an Attitude into Google, take you right to my blog.
I tell you what, you've been a wealth of information, and you have certainly been a great guest, hadn't he, Jeff?
He sure has, and I'm ready to get out right now and look for caches. As soon as I get through watching Jeff Ford's and Wes's video, I'm going out, even if it's in my own backyard.
All right. Well, Seven and Jeff, it's really been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
It has been it's been
our
pleasure.
Our honor.
Yeah, sure has.
Yep.
And we're going to have you back on. I listened to you on Josh's Beyond Sight and Sound show, the archive version of that, and I knew then that you were going to be a great guest. And so we certainly do appreciate you being on here with us tonight.
Oh, well, I appreciate you guys asking me on. Thanks so much.
And thanks for Mark calling in and for Woody calling in. Yep. Everybody in the chat. And what did Jennifer say the other day that we needed to say, Jeff, to other viewers, other places?
Oh, and she said she was talking about we needed to say thank you for all our viewers out of the country and other countries for watching. And then we sure, of course, they were watching listening to the archives. And then we appreciate the viewers in other countries, too. So, I mean, we've got several. Now, I mean, if I could say that in seven different languages, that would be okay, but... I mean, I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, mucho gracias.
Yeah. All right.
And we thank all the guys here in the United States, the guys and gals that are on the chat tonight. You make our show so special. We got a notification this week. I think it was either iTunes or iHeartRadio that we had 5 stars here in the States and also in UK, and we're just floored by that. But we're going to get out, and we want to remind you now, as soon as we close this show out at 8:30 Central Time, which is 3 more minutes, go and catch Plugmaster Ford on YouTube. They're going to have a live stream on his channel there talking about the Great Silver Horde. So until next week, we will let you go here, and we'll catch you next Thursday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight on Relics Radio. We really do appreciate it. Be sure and join us live each Thursday night at 7 o'clock Central Time, 8 o'clock Eastern here on Spreaker. Or you can catch the archive show at Relics Radio on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, or iTunes. Please take a minute and hit the like button and be sure and follow us so that you'll get notifications of all of our upcoming broadcasts. You can also find us on YouTube at Digging with Seven or Tennessee Jeff, or you can check us out on our Relics Radio Facebook page. If you'd like to get in touch with us, then send an email to diggingwith7@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We hope you'll join us next Thursday night, and until then, get out there and dig some history.